we've done a coin flip, and Mr. Sbranti will be starting off the debate. So I will ask the first question. There'll be 90 seconds to respond, and we'll start the timer once I finish the question. So the introduction to everybody here. What traits or characteristics do you feel a state assembly member should possess, and what in your background makes you suitable for the position?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important is to actually have leadership experience, and I think that's one of the things that I've shown both as a council member and as a mayor. I think if you've actually been in the arena and you have a record of accomplishment, I think that's something that is really important, and I think I've been able to demonstrate that as mayor of Dublin, where we're a city that had a $13 million surplus this year. We didn't raise taxes. We don't have any debt. We manage our pension obligations. And, it's something that I'm really proud of. So I think that's one of the things, is having a record of accomplishment. We're a city where our parks have won awards, our roads have won awards, our approach to housing has won awards, and our approach to economic development has won awards. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group rating Dublin the best small city in the Bay Area for our approach to attracting and retaining jobs. So I think in addition to that, just being someone who listens to the community, someone who's proactive, which is something that I've demonstrated as well at the local level, someone who is accessible and out in the community. I think those are just personal traits that I also think are really important beyond just having the skill set in terms of the experience. And I think those are the things that really do set me apart in this race.
Thank you.
I think there's a few different qualities that are very important for a state legislator to have. Certainly courage is one of them, the ability to take a stand even if it is something that may be against your political party. Or other interests that have been very active with you and you've been active with. I think that's something that I've demonstrated. It's one of the reasons I received the endorsement of the Contra Costa Times and the Chronicle, not exactly right-wing newspapers. Having an ability to be independent and work in a way that's bipartisan. We really need that very much in Sacramento. The ability to work with others regardless of their political loyalties and to listen to them fairly and have the courage to do that. I also think it does depend on your experience. It's very helpful that you have experience in the areas where it's most needed for the job that you want. In Sacramento, we face many challenges in our education system and our economy. I come from a small family business background, and I work every day with smaller family businesses trying to help them get started and succeed. And I see how difficult we make it to create jobs and keep them here in California. We need that experience in the Assembly so that we can be fighting those bills that are not helpful to job creation in California and promoting the ones that are. And the same in education. You need to have experience in education. It's a tremendous area that's important in the Assembly level, where education policy is really what we live and breathe every day. I'm the only parent with school-age children in this race. I've served on a preschool board in the San Ramon Valley, and I've also served on a school site council governing an elementary school with 1,000 students. I see the ways that we can be making education more successful in California that go beyond simply sending money at the status quo. So courage and experience, and I think leadership. The ability to actually lead others and help corral them together to get things done.
Catharine, when considering a piece of legislation, what underlying principles will govern your decision on how to vote for it?
That's a good question. Variety. What's the purpose of the legislation? What's some of the backstory? And so often there are bills that have good talking points. A lot of them have good talking points, but then you find out what they actually can do and the impact they can have on people. I'll give you a couple of examples that we've recently seen this last legislative cycle. It maybe show an analysis that I would do. There was H.R. 29, which is a resolution passed in the Assembly telling our local governments that they should not contract out for services, that they actually should internalize and make employees of everyone for whom they need services. So your IT, your technology work, instead of having a business that you contract out with, you have to bring that internal. Waste management, law enforcement. Terrible bill. That's one that would really hurt the financial stability of our local governments as well as small businesses that work with them. And so I would look at what's the impact and what actually are the original motivations for doing it. You don't always measure your success as a legislator by how many bills and regulations you generate. It's also what you're doing that actually could be getting out of the way. So those are some areas that I would look at. And always in California, what's the cost and how are we going to pay for it? And are only some people asked to pay for it, or is it fairly a cost that's shared by everyone who benefits from it?
Yeah, and I actually agree with Governor Jerry Brown. A lot of times he says not every problem requires a legislative solution, and I think there's truth in that. And I think for everything that is done, and I know this is the lens in which I view every ordinance and every policy decision I've made at the local level as mayor, is doing that cost-benefit analysis to figure out what are the costs behind what the proposed legislation is and what are the benefits. and doing that analysis on each and every piece of legislation, or even the whole budget package. Making sure that that analysis is done, and also keeping in mind, what is it necessary? What's before you? Does it really move the ball forward? For the state of California, in a meaningful way, and also thinking about the balance between thinking about the entire state, because you are a state representative, but also thinking about the people back in the district, within the 16th Assembly District, and making sure that whatever is being proposed doesn't cause any undue harm in the district and is reflective of the values of the voters within the district. So that's how I would look at pieces of legislation, and that's how I have, and I think my record speaks to that.
All right. We actually come back to education, and some of the questions I'll be asking today were actually written by high school seniors in the government class at Las Lomas. One of their homework assignments was to come up with questions for you. But first, 90 seconds. Catherine, you answer first.
Yep.
California continues to grow its population, although at a lower rate than prior to the year 2000. How do you propose dealing with our most critical resource, which is water?
Sure. Well, in California, as my brown lawn and dirty car, and all of us probably have this know, we've had some problems with water management, particularly the last 20 or 30 years where we have not made investments in storage. We've really made strides in conservation and efficiency, and even some in recycling, but we haven't made investments in storage. And we see the effects of it now. We're washing away 1 million to 6 million acre-feet of water a year from the Sierra snowpack because we can't store it. And so I support the water bond that's on the ballot, for example, that does have investment in water storage. It's just the start. We need to continue investing in our water storage and projects that may not be the large projects like twin tunnels, which I oppose. It doesn't result in more water capacity or environmental sustainability, but do support those projects that have bipartisan support and store water. I also think we need to be continue to focus on efficiency and conservation, as well as recycling. That's an area where the state can make more progress. I'd like to see that something that the state can be helping our local governments do more of, if at all possible, because that's an area we're going to have to make strides in if we want to continue to have a water supply for our state. But it absolutely has to be storage. We can't ignore that anymore, and we need to make those investments.
Yeah, when it deals with water, it really is a multifaceted approach. I mean, this is one of the areas that I work closely with as mayor. We're a statewide leader in terms of the use of recycling. 72% of our water use, municipal water use, comes from recycled sources. We've been recognized statewide for our conservation efforts. And the state has talked about recycling for a long time, but it hasn't shown leadership in any meaningful way, working with cities, working with water districts. So recycling and conservation are two key things. But storage is important, and I'm glad that the water bond does have money for storage. We haven't stored enough, and it's an area that we have to get back to. So you have to focus on recycling, you have to focus on conservation, you have to focus on storage, you have to focus on how you manage the groundwater basin. I think that's something that's critical and important. You have to use technologies, be it drip irrigation or ways to control runoff. And then finally, you have to focus on your infrastructure below ground in addition to your conveyance system. So, one of the things in the Contra Costa Times did a report about it, in terms of the leakage, anywhere from 15 to 20% of our pipes, because our average pipes in California are 75 years old. So focusing on our below ground infrastructure to make sure that we're not losing that water beneath the surface, and making sure we know we have a dry climate, so we have to take advantage of each and every drop that comes in, treat it precious, and make sure that we manage it effectively.